All right, so AI, right?
hmm
It seems like it's everywhere these days, and now it's popping up in courtrooms.
It really is amazing how fast it's spreading.
Yeah, and this deep dive, we're going to be looking at a consultation note from the Supreme Court of Western Australia, and they're trying to figure out, like, how to use this technology responsibly in legal proceedings.
That's really interesting.
It is. So it's like we're getting this front row seat to see how the legal system's trying to adapt to this, cutting edge technology.
Yeah, and it's specifically generative AI that they're looking at. So think, large language models like ChatGPT.
Oh wow.
Yeah, things that, you might have heard about lawyers using it to like summarize huge amounts of legal documents or even draft responses, things like that.
So they're not just talking about AI in the abstract.
Mhm.
They're actually dealing with how it's being used right now.
Right, exactly.
So what's got the court concerned about all this?
Well, one thing that's making them pause is the possibility of AI hallucination.
Hallucination.
Yeah, so these models are very, very good at predicting text based on huge data sets,
Hmm.
but they don't actually reason like a human brain does.
Okay.
So, it can sound very convincing,
Oh, I bet.
but it might not actually be grounded in actual legal precedent.
So it's like it could spit out something that sounds right,
Exactly.
but actually just isn't.
Yeah, and you can imagine relying on an AI to cite a legal precedent, and then it turns out the case doesn't even exist.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah. And so it could totally undermine a legal argument.
Mm.
And then there's also the data security question, right? Like,
Right.
what happens to all that confidential client information that gets fed into these AI systems?
Well, that's a great point.
It's a big concern for the court.
Yeah, for sure. So are there any, is Western Australia the only place that's kind of thinking about this or?
Oh, no, this is definitely a global issue.
Okay.
It's a bit of a mixed bag, really. You've got New Zealand. They have these really detailed AI guidelines for judges and for lawyers and even for the public. It's very comprehensive.
So they're really ahead of the game there.
Yeah, I think they are. And then on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got New South Wales,
Okay.
which has this very strict uh, no AI policy for drafting key legal documents.
Like what?
Yeah, so things like witness statements, they just say, nope, not allowed.
Interesting.
It's a much more cautious approach.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
If anything is drafted with AI, they need to have every single citation, every reference meticulously verified. So it really highlights how differently people are approaching this.
It seems like everyone is trying to find like the right balance
Yeah,
between, embracing this new technology,
right.
but also being cautious,
Right.
making sure that it's used properly.
Exactly. It's all about finding what works for their legal context. But what's interesting is most jurisdictions are engaging with the potential and the pitfalls of AI.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
Yeah. So Queensland, Victoria, the UK, they all have some kind of guidelines in place.
So it's not really a question of if AI is going to be a part of the legal system.
Yeah.
It's more like a question of how.
Right. Exactly.
And it seems like the Supreme Court of Western Australia is taking this really proactive approach
Yeah,
by
definitely.
by asking these like big questions about how to navigate this new landscape.
Yeah, they're taking it really seriously. They're seeking feedback on whether there should be formal guidelines for AI
Hmm.
and what those might look like.
That's like they're crowdsourcing the rule book for AI in their courts.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What are some of the specific questions they're asking?
Well, for starters, they want to know if there are any areas of legal practice where AI should be just restricted or even banned outright.
Okay, so they're not just blindly embracing this technology.
No.
They're really thinking about where it might not be appropriate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're also asking, whether lawyers should have to disclose when they've used AI in their work.
Transparency.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and how those disclosures should be handled.
that makes sense. It's about finding that balance between, making sure clients are informed,
Right.
but also making sure that the use of AI doesn't somehow bias their perception of the legal process.
Exactly.
Yeah. What else are they thinking about?
They're also looking at the accuracy and the ethical considerations of using AI-generated legal content.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it's really important, How do we ensure that this work is, verified, free of errors, and free of potential biases?
Right, because those biases could exist in the data that the AI is trained on.
Exactly, exactly. And so it's a critical concern for maintaining the integrity of the whole legal system, really.
It sounds like they're really trying to anticipate potential problems before they become like major issues.
Yeah, I think they are. And, it's not just about lawyers and judges. It's about making sure that AI in the courtroom actually serves the interest of justice and fairness
Yeah.
for everyone that's involved.
That's a great point. So this is all very thought-provoking.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, like, what does this actually mean for the average person?
Yeah.
What's at stake here as AI becomes more, embedded in our legal system?
That's a great question. And it's one that the court is really actively grappling with.
Okay.
This isn't just about legal procedure. This has broader societal implications as well.
Okay, so we've talked about the tech.
Right.
We've talked about the concerns.
Right.
And we've talked about kind of the global landscape.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? Like, what are the potential benefits and risks of AI in the courtroom? That's something we'll have to explore as we continue this deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to unpack here, and it's important to understand how this could shape the future of law and justice.
Well, I'm hooked. Let's keep digging into this.
Sounds good.
So it seems like the Supreme Court of Western Australia is um, really serious about this.
Oh, yeah. They're not messing around. It's not
Okay.
just, a little side project for them. They're really diving deep.
And what I find interesting is that they're not just like issuing these, top-down decrees.
Right.
They're actually asking for feedback
Right.
from, the legal community, from the public.
Exactly. They're really trying to get this right.
Yeah. It's like they recognize that this is something that could impact everyone
Yeah, it really could.
who interacts with the legal system.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the specific questions that they're asking?
Well, they're interested in, how lawyers are currently using AI, what they envision for its future use, and whether a formal AI practice direction is even necessary.
Hmm. Interesting.
So, it's very open-ended, very collaborative.
Yeah. So it's more about, understanding the current situation and then figuring out the best way to move forward
Exactly.
rather
Yeah.
than just kind of dictating how things should be.
Yeah, it's a much more, thoughtful approach, I think.
It is.
They even ask, like, who should a potential practice direction even apply to?
Oh, interesting.
Like, should lawyers and non-lawyers be treated differently? Should it be like, guidelines or a strict policy or just a practice note?
Right.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, all these different options. It's like
Yeah.
they're trying to map out all the different paths before they choose one.
Exactly. Yeah, and within that, they also get into the nitty-gritty,
Right.
Like, for instance, they ask, are there specific areas of legal practice where generative AI should just be restricted or even prohibited altogether?
Hmm. So they are thinking about the fact that there might be some legal tasks that are just not suitable
Right.
for AI.
Exactly, yeah. Like think about drafting affidavits or witness statements or expert reports. These are all crucial legal documents that really rely on, accurate interpretation of information, understanding of legal principles,
Right.
and sometimes even like an assessment of credibility or intent.
Yeah. Those are all things that require like a deep understanding of human behavior
Right.
and legal context.
Exactly, yeah. And, as advanced as AI is,
Right.
it may not be able to grasp all of that yet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that leads into another key area they're looking at, which is a disclosure.
Okay.
So, should lawyers actually have to disclose when they've used generative AI in their work?
Oh, that's interesting.
And if so, like how and under what circumstances?
Yeah, because transparency is important,
It is.
but it seems like it could be tricky.
Yeah, it's a real double-edged sword.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you want clients to know what tools are being used.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you disclose that you're using AI, will that affect how they perceive their case?
Yeah, it almost seems like there could be some sort of like psychological effect
Exactly.
where people are like, oh, they're using a machine.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So is AI going to be seen as this valuable tool, that makes things more efficient, more thorough, or are clients going to think, oh, they're cutting corners.
Right.
They're not giving me the personal attention I deserve.
Exactly. Yeah. And that kind of leads into another big question that they're considering,
Yeah, and it's a big one.
which is, how do we actually ensure the accuracy
Right.
and the ethical use of AI-generated legal content?
Right, because lawyers have a duty, right, to provide competent, ethical representation,
Exactly.
whether that work is produced by a human or by a machine.
Yeah. So what are some of the safeguards that they're thinking about?
Well, they're asking, What steps should lawyers take to verify that AI work?
Okay.
Are there protocols for review, for double-checking, validating the information that comes out of these systems?
Right.
And then, how do we prevent those biases from creeping into the AI outputs?
That's a tough one.
It really is,
Yeah.
because, AI, it's trained on these massive data sets.
Right.
And those data sets can reflect existing biases in society.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that AI isn't just perpetuating those biases?
Yeah, so it's not just about um, preventing the AI from, like making things up or getting things wrong.
Yeah.
It's also about making sure that what it produces is fair
Exactly.
and impartial
Yeah,
and doesn't actually worsen existing inequalities in the system.
you got it. That's exactly what we need to be thinking about. And that's why this whole conversation is so important.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about some abstract technology here.
Right.
We're talking about, the very foundations of justice.
Yeah, this is big.
It really is. And it sounds like the Supreme Court of Western Australia is taking it very seriously.
They are.
And they're doing so in a very transparent, inclusive way.
Yeah.
They're really trying to get input from everyone involved.
This is great. This is a good segue into talking about, the
Yeah.
broader implications of all of this,
Yeah.
for everyone, not just people involved in the legal system, but
Exactly. What are the potential impacts, good and bad?
yeah.
And how is this going to shape the future of law and justice? I think that's where we need to go next.
I agree. Let's head in that direction.
Sounds good.
So we've been spending this deep dive talking about the Supreme Court of Western Australia and how they're, dealing with this whole AI thing.
Right. It's a big issue.
Yeah. But what does it all actually mean,
Yeah.
for the average person out there?
That's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've talked about the technology and the concerns and how other countries are approaching it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's about how AI could change everyone's access to justice.
So it's not just a theoretical discussion then.
Not at all. This has real-world consequences.
Could you give us some examples of that?
Sure. One of the most exciting things about AI is that it could make the legal system much more efficient and affordable.
Oh.
Imagine if AI could, help streamline all the paperwork,
Right.
reduce costs, and make legal help more accessible for people who can't afford a lawyer.
So it could be a real game changer.
Exactly. Especially for people who have felt shut out of the legal system.
Yeah, because it can be so expensive.
It really can. But, of course, there are potential downsides, too.
There always are, aren't there?
Mm.
What are we maybe overlooking?
Well, one big concern is that AI could make existing inequalities even worse.
Oh, how so?
If only wealthy people can afford this technology, we could end up with a two-tiered justice system.
So the gap between the haves and have-nots.
Exactly. It could get even wider.
Scary thought.
And then there's the fundamental question of, human judgment.
Yeah, that's something we talked about a little bit before.
Right. Can AI ever truly replace the nuanced understanding and the ethical thinking that human judges and lawyers bring to the table?
Right, it's not just about data, right?
It's not just about cold, hard data. We need to remember the human element.
Yeah.
Justice isn't just about processing information. It's about understanding individual situations, the people involved, and ensuring a fair process.
That makes sense. So it seems like finding that balance
Yeah.
between the benefits of AI and the importance of human judgment, that's going to be really key moving forward.
It's absolutely crucial. We have to be really thoughtful about how we use AI in the legal system.
Yeah.
It should be a tool to make justice better, not to replace the values that are at the core of our legal system.
I think that's a great point. So this has been, a really interesting deep dive.
Yeah, it
We've
has.
explored the potential of AI to change things, but also the potential risks and the ethical issues.
There's a lot to think about.
There is. So I think the big takeaway here is that this isn't just a technology question. It's really a societal question.
It is, yeah.
And we all need to be part of the conversation about how AI is used in the courts.
Absolutely. We need to make sure it's used ethically and responsibly.
Right. For the benefit of everyone.
Exactly.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive.
It's been a great discussion.
But, the conversation doesn't have to end here.
Right.
I hope everyone listening will, continue thinking about this.
Yeah,
Consider all the questions we've raised.
absolutely.
And maybe even share your own thoughts about this. The future of AI in the courtroom, it's something that we're all going to be shaping together.
That's a great way to put it.
So, thanks for joining us, and until next time.
Thanks for having me.